Okay. Now, is oil going to go to $60 a barrel? I don't think so. So 50, 55, sure. Iran is still increasing their oil supply. Yeah. We have an OPEC meeting, right, in June, don't we? We have the G7 coming up. We have OPEC coming up. We have the Fed. We have the Brexit. We got a lot of risks coming up, but I think OPEC is dead. I think the cartel is finished. If you look at the history of the oil industry, here we go. All right, so you have the Western world, Western powers, European and the United States companies go into the Middle East, and they're like, hey, you got oil here. And they're like, oh, salam, my good friend. Yeah. So anyway, so they go in there and sort of in pseudo-colonialist, imperialist pig dog powers, they go in there and they basically rape and pillage the Middle East of their oil. And the United States and Western Europe actually needed this because they were building their economies, in particular after World War II, right? So the GDP in the United States kind of looked like GDP in China during Chinese boom years when they were, expanding, right? So the United States expanded on cheap oil, and they did everything they could to keep oil cheap. And so the Middle Eastern oil producers are like, hey, this ain't fair. This is not right. What you're doing is wrong. You're raping and pillaging us. And the United States and other oil consuming countries said, well, we don't care. So you get this point where the Middle Eastern oil producers are put in such a situation where they're like, hey, we need to band together and work together so that we're not taken advantage of any longer. And the reason that Venezuela is the only South American country, or any in the Americas continents, the only member of OPEC out of the Americas is Venezuela, is that Venezuela, having huge oil reserves, sort of like Canadian tar sands, it's very thick, heavy oil. But Venezuela has tons of oil, and Venezuela was actually the one that proposed the idea of OPEC. And they got together and they went to all the Middle Eastern and North African producers and said, hey, we got to work together. We got to work together. We got to work together. And finally, OPEC got to the point of desperation where they're like, we need to work together. And what they needed to do is stabilize oil prices to get fair oil prices. Makes sense, right? They were just completely taken advantage of. So the Western world screwed everything up. So then OPEC gets together. And then guess what? They were able to raise oil prices. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're like, man, this is pretty good. So they raised oil prices more. Hey, even better. We keep raising oil prices. People keep buying our oil. And yet our boats get bigger. Our cars get faster. And our trips to Dubai, nice. So all of a sudden, like, this is pretty good. And now greed on their side. Remember, greed on the oil consuming countries that actually sent in their national oil companies to the Middle East. Greed took over and created the whole problem where OPEC was necessary. OPEC comes in, stabilizes the situation, takes power away from those national oil companies of Europe and of America, and greed takes over for OPEC. OPEC drives the prices up, and then they start saying, hey, well, we got all this money and we got all this oil and everybody needs us so much, and the United States is now importing oil like crazy. We're really powerful. We should use oil not just for money. We should use it for politics. Yeah, let's use oil as a weapon. Yeah. Long story short, they screw it up just as bad. So now there's two sides of the coin. You had basically the Western world that ran the show for decades, and their greed took over because so much money was involved, and they screwed it all up. OPEC gets together, stabilizes the situation, greed takes over, and then they screw it all up. So here we are. There's the last 100 years in a nutshell. And now we get to the point where OPEC couldn't agree on anything. They can't even agree to get together to talk. Okay? And this is good because what's taken over is that the world simply always finds a way. You guys remember Jurassic Park, how they say nature always finds a way? The world always finds a way, right? So what happened when, what happened when OPEC used oil as a weapon and drove up oil prices 300% by, banning the Western world from oil supplies? Well, suddenly they're like, we need oil, we need it fast, and we will do whatever it takes to find the oil, and we need oil close to home in friendly waters. And within like 3 or 4 years, we're pumping oil out of the North Sea like crazy. Suddenly we got oil sands in northern Canada. Boom. We're drilling in Alaska. Boom. So now like a significant portion of the world is producing expensive oil relative to lower hanging fruit. But now we got oil in the North Sea and, off the coast of the UK. We got oil in Canada and Alaska. Boom. And it was only because of OPEC. Thank you very much. If they hadn't used oil as a weapon and increased it 300%, we would not even be in Alaska or northern Canada or in the North Sea. We wouldn't need them. So thank you for that. Now we have our own oil supply. Yeah, I see that. Well, it's not skyrocketing. You're getting all funny. What do you mean skyrocketing? It's actually down on 1 minute. So anyway, so now we're in this world where oil prices were very, very high recently on Chinese demand. And what did the oil prices do? We scoured the earth for new oil supply, couldn't really find it. So then we invented new technology like being able to drill through 20 miles of salt off the coast of Brazil to find oil, or being able to suck oil out of a solid stone, and how to frack, drill sideways, frack, and suck oil out of tight, just amazing. What do you mean, Matt? S&P 500 down 15%. I actually showed slightly higher here. Yeah, I don't. So anyways, what'll happen now, our new world is that we have lots and lots of oil. Lots of oil. There's lots of it. We can get it. The thing is, what is the cost of securing the oil? And right now it's about $65. And as long as Iran has come online, by the way, like Libya, you guys been watching Libya? Holy smokes, right? Libya is going to triple their oil supply, their oil production. Apparently, Gaddafi was an idiot. But anyway, so we're going back to the Occidental days, right? And so Libya is going to triple their oil production pretty soon. Lots and lots and lots of investment going into Iraq. Libya is going to triple very, very soon. So, we'll probably keep oil less than 65. But if oil goes up to 65, guess what? The United States will just export oil because we'll frack it, baby. We'll frack it. And prices immediately come down. And we'll come down to more like 40 or 50 where we are now. And my next prediction in the next, let's say 3 or 4 years, some entrepreneur in the United States is going to figure out a way to improve processes, right? Or improve technology so that they can that they can frack oil, not at 65, but more like $45. And that will keep oil cheap for decades. But that's all I know about that. By the way, Venezuela is going to default on its debt. This is just a guess. You ready for this? Venezuela is going to default on its debt. Its currency is already worthless, so they just can't print anymore. They will actually default on their debt. They'll just say, that's it. And there's no way we can pay it. And then, and I mean the whole thing, Puerto Rican style, right? It's going to completely default on everything. Bondholders are just going to lose everything. But the government will topple, and the new regime will go from a nationalized focus for their economy, where basically they try to survive off oil, right, and have nothing else. So what they're going to do is the government will topple. They'll put in a new, more liberal, well, liberal is probably not the right word, but a new government that will privatize the oil industry and attract foreign direct investment and do deals with like Royal Dutch Shell and BP and Exxon to come in and invest heavily into their current oil reserves, but also to their potential oil reserves now off the coast. So they'll look at deep offshore drilling and stuff like that. So they're going to need some huge partnerships. And then if they do things right, they can negotiate deals similar to Brazil. And Brazil's deals with these national oil or international oil companies were to do things like, yes, okay, we'll charge you rents, and we'll get some of the income, but also 65% of the industry that's involved in going out there and drilling offshore. I mean, you need shipping companies, supply chain companies, you need tool companies, you need all these things. They all have 65% of all that needs to be Brazilian. Smart. So Venezuela will have to say, okay, that's working very well for Brazil, and that's a better deal for us, because then the money is shared not with just the government to go out and spend, and then when oil prices go down, they keep spending because that's all they can possibly do. If they stop spending, they'll lose power. So they'll keep spending, which is borrowing, and all of a sudden you can't afford to pay your bills anymore. So now you print money, and now you have inflation, and Venezuela is looking at 700% inflation. So anyways, get ready for a big Venezuelan default and lots of foreign direct investment going into the economy. And what does that mean? It means their production levels are going to go high. And you know what? Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia. And they haven't even invested into their technology. It's completely obsolete. And they haven't even explored for new reserves. And you know it's there. They're just too caught up in their socialist pig dog, communist socialist nonsense to reinvest into the only industry that keeps them alive. It's just ridiculous. So anyways, there's going to be a huge crash, huge investment, and then more supply over the next 20 years, right? So holy smokes, get ready for that. Hey, and by the way, if you can figure out a way to make money on that, you should start doing that now. Wouldn't it be cool to be the one guy that shows up in Venezuela right as they default and the economy just collapses, and you go out there and you start buying beachfront property in Venezuela? You're buying entire skyscrapers? Yeah. And then 10 years later, you got oil experts from all over the world and moving in, and all that foreign direct investment flowing into the economy, and a stabilized government, and local wages going up. Yeah. Be filthy stinking rich to think ahead. Oh, wait. Shh. No, wait. No, don't do that. Wait, don't do that. Leave it for me. Right on, Kate.